right, hi, fourth graders. Let me see if you can see me a little bit better. So now I am recording from my home because we can't go to the school anymore. So we may have some video issues. I'm going to work through that the best I can. But I'm still going to try to help you with your math. So we worked on adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers. We worked on multiplying whole numbers by fractions. So today we're going to look at adding fractions with denominators of 10 and 100. So if I look at 10, what do I multiply it by to get 100? Okay, I multiply it by 10. And if you look, we're just adding the numbers. 1 times 1 is 1. And then we're adding the 2 zeros to give us 2 zeros. So that'll be important to think about as we're looking at these fractions. So let's see. Okay, great. I'm going to actually move me over so I can make this a little bit bigger for you. All right, so the first one we're doing, all you're doing is matching the fraction to the picture. Remember, this is in tenths, so the blue ones will be equal to tenths. If I look at this one, 1, 2, 3, 4 tenths. So I'm going to drag and drop that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tenths. I'm going to drag and drop that one. Now I have 2 bars shaded in purple, so that's going to give me 20 hundredths. So that leaves this one as 76 hundredths. Let's look at the fraction 20 hundredths. As you can see, the purple bar on our screen shows that there are 20 blocks. Now, if I made that into tenths, and draw it out, my box is not that straight. Alright, so I made that into tenths. What you're going to do is take a 0 off the top and take a 0 off the bottom. So now I have 2 tenths. And if we shade that in, our picture should look the same as this picture of 20 hundredths, okay? So if you're changing it to tenths, you have to have the zeros and take those off. If you don't have a 0 on the top and don't have a 0 on the bottom, then you can't take it off. If you're changing it to hundredths, you just add that 0 back. Oops, skipped a page. All right, so again, here I've done 2 of them for you. You're just going to type in how many tenths and how many hundredths those are. And we know the blue ones show the tenths and the purple ones show the hundredths. So just hit backspace on those question marks. And if you're doing it on paper, they're already been deleted for you. Well, I don't need that. Thank you. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths. Here I have 1 tenth. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths. So you can write it as this or you can write it as 0.6, okay? And then here I have 80 hundredths. And if we look at 8 tens and 80 hundredths, we just added that 0 to get that different denominator. So here we go, fixing those problems. So I had 3 tenths, I added that 0 and got 30 hundredths and drag and drop my picture there. So if I have 6 tenths, that 10 got the extra 0. So my 6 gets the extra 0. So this will be 60 hundredths. So I'm going to find which one is 60 hundredths and drag and drop it into my block right there. So now I have 7/10. So I write it over here, 7/10. To get to hundredths, I had to add a 0. So bring your 7 over and add a 0 to the end of it. You will have 70 hundredths. And drag and drop that box. I have 1/10. Changing it to hundredths. Bring the 1 over and add the 0. So that's 10 hundredths. And drag and drop that picture in there. Alright, I'm going to pause my video and give you a second to do this paper and see how you do. I'm going to try to pause my video. Alright, so started our video back again. We had 40 hundredths. And we're going the opposite way to tenths, so we lose the 0 and get 4 tenths. Okay? 90 hundredths. We lose a 0 to get 9 tenths. So I go down here and find my 9 tenths and drag and drop the box. 20 hundredths. Lose that 0. Bring your 2 over. 2 tenths. Drag and drop my picture. Well, I gotta slide my paper up so you can see it. And then 100 hundredths. Both of them lose a 0 to be 10 tenths. And as you can see, the whole thing is shaded in. Alright, so you're going to go in and fill these in on your own, and I will come back and show you my answers. Alright, so as you can see, some of them started with hundredths and some of them started with tens. Check over your work. If you have some questions, you can always comment on this assignment and I can answer any questions or do a Google chat with you to answer any questions. Alright, so these have been done for you. Don't worry about the number line. 5 tenths, we're going to add the 0, so that would make that 50 hundredths. And you can see when you divide it even smaller, the number line, it stays the same. Same with this one. We have 10 hundredths. We're taking off the 0 at the end, so you have 1 tenth. For 70 hundredths, you're taking off the 0 at the end, so you have 7 tenths. Remember that I showed you at the top of your paper here that 10 times 10 is 100. Well, that's really what we're doing when we're subtracting and adding these zeros on. We're multiplying these fractions by 10. 10 over 10 is 1 whole, so we're not changing the fraction. We're just multiplying it by 1 to rename it. Just when we simplified and made equivalent fractions. We're making an equivalent fraction by multiplying it by 1. We're just saying 1 is 10 over 10. And if you look, 4 times 10 is 40. And 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 10 is 90. 10 times 9 is 90. 10 times 10 is 100. So your denominator is going to be 100 because we're adding that 0. 6 times 10 is 60. So if you multiply by 10 by that 1, you get a bigger fraction. When you're dividing by 10 over 10, that 1 whole, you're getting a smaller fraction. That's why we're taking away the zeros. Okay? 50 divided by 10 is equal to blank. So you're thinking, what number times 10 gives me 50? Which would be 5. 10 times 10 is 100, so 100 divided by 10 would give you 10. We're dividing by that unit of 10. 70 divided by 10 would be 7. And again, 100 divided by 10 would be 10. 20 divided by 10 would be 2, and 100 divided by 10 would be 10. Okay, so you're going to use the check marks and the X marks to come and see if these are equivalent. So this would be a good time now to pause your video and go try this on your own, and then come back and check to see if you got it right. I'm going to go ahead and talk through this if you're struggling with it, but if you think you've got it, pause the video here, go try it on your own, and then come back and check your answers. So 2 doesn't have a 0 on the end. So 2 hundredths would be like 2 pennies. 2 tenths would be like $2. That's a big difference, okay? So they're not equivalent. These don't even have the same numerator, so I know they can't be equivalent. Now let's look at the next one. 5 tenths and 50 hundredths. 5, add a 0, you get 50. 10, add a 0, you get 100. So that one is correct. This one I've done for you. 7 hundredths and 7 tenths. Okay, I took away a 0 on the denominator, but can I take away a 0 in the numerator? No, so those can't be equal. It would have to be 70 hundredths is equal to 7 tenths. 90 hundredths is equal to 9 tenths. I took a 0 on the top and the 0 on the bottom away, so that one is correct. 9 hundredths is equal to 90 tenths. Okay, this number is greater than 1. This number is way less than 1. So we know that that can't be correct. 10 tenths is equal to 1. 100 hundredths is equal to 1. So that is equal. If the numerators are not the same, then they are not going to be the same fraction. So we can go ahead and mark that out, and go ahead and mark 1 tenth and 11 hundredths. Remember, we're only adding and taking away zeros, as that is a derivative of the tens, not ones or twos. We're just doing the tens. So the tens create that 0 on the end. 60 hundredths and 60 tenths. Well, I took away a 0 in the denominator, and I didn't take a 0 away in the numerator, so that one is not correct. 8 tenths and 80 hundredths are equal to each other. All right, so here you're doing the same thing, except for we don't have the check marks. We're just looking at the answers, checking to see. I think this is our last slide. That's what I thought. So again, if you want to pause this, see how you do, and then come back. So I'm going from hundredths to tenths, so I take away that 0 at the top, which gives me 5 tenths. I'm going from tenths to hundredths, so I'm adding a 0, so I have 30 hundredths. Hundredths to tenths, taking away a 0 gives me 1 tenth. Tenths to hundredths means I'm adding a 0, so 40 hundredths. 7 tenths. 6 tenths. Here we're adding that 0, 90 tenths. 90 hundredths, 9 tenths to 90 hundredths. 20 hundredths to 2 tenths. 7 tenths to 70 hundredths. 80 hundredths to 8 tenths. 5 tenths to 50 hundredths. All right, and this is all you're doing for Monday. If you have questions, remember that we'll be on at 10 and 2. If we can be every day, we'll be happy to answer your questions. If you just want to put a comment on this, I can come in and look at your work. If you want to put a comment on the assignment, I can come in and look at that. Those are private too. Any way that you want to contact us, that we can look at your work and help you if you're struggling with this. All right. and stop.